What is up, everybody? Once again, Christopher Miles here with a brand new episode of Issues with Wrestling. Jared, I think we got a really cool topic this week, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. One of the rarities to discuss on wrestling podcasts.
Yeah. So those of you that know, listen to the show, know that we're proud St. Louisans, and there's not many cities with a much more diverse and rich wrestling history than St. Louis, Missouri. And we figured we'd have to have somebody on the show that could talk about that. A wrestling historian, a member of the independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Luke Roberts. Luke, welcome to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is I, Luke Roberts, right here on this wonderful production here of Interstate 70 Sports Media. Tonight, we're going to be talking all things St. Louis, an area that is all near and dear to our own hearts. And again, when you talk about professional wrestling, there's a lot of great areas that have professional wrestling history, but one of the greatest by far is the St. Louis area. And right here tonight on the program, we're getting an opportunity to talk history, St. Louis style.
All right, so Luke, I want to go all the way back as television goes with St. Louis wrestling history. Tell me about Mr. Sam Muchnick and why he's important to not only wrestling history, but St. Louis wrestling history.
Well, first of all, when you want to talk about Sam Muchnick, I mean, again, for true wrestling historians, they're going to say, what have you done? Lived under a rock? Sam Muchnick was a man's man, a promoter's promoter. He was one of those where a lot of things that Sam Muchnick did were things that even by those standards were unheard of. Things like if he promised you a particular payday, you would have said payday. If you were going to be promised X amount of money, it would be paid to the cent. And when you talk about people like Sam Muchnick, I mean, again, had the opportunity to hear stories from the likes of Herb Simmons, from the late Larry Matisick, among others. I've heard some stories from back in the day from people the likes of Ron Powers, of Danny Boy Stanfill, Gary Jackson, the Gorgeous One, the Night Train, whatever you want to call him. But when it comes down to it, you hear the stories about Sam Muchnick. And again, when it comes down to it, the man, I don't want to dare say he was the Vince McMahon of St. Louis or even the Vince McMahon Sr. of St. Louis, because when it comes down to it, Sam Muchnick was the true professional. And I remember hearing stories from the likes of the Von Erichs, the Flairs, the Harley Races, the Briscoes, the Funks, saying you had not made it until you had wrestled on a card here for Sam Muchnick. And again, at the time when you're talking about the NWA, the premier wrestling promotion of the time, you can't get much bigger in St. Louis. And the reason why is because you have somebody with such great integrity as the legendary Sam Muchnick.
So, Jared, I have to ask, you being the youngin in the group, do you have any idea who this man is or was?
I have a decent amount of knowledge about Mr.
Mhm.
Sam Muchnick. Without him, there would have been no NWA in the world, honestly, if you really think about it. He set the standard for the entire territory system.
Mhm. And, Luke, being the NWA president and having him based here was huge, right?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, again, when you sit there and I know we've all heard the stories, whether it's WWE or any other form of professional wrestling history, you see a lot of promotions that have large areas. You talk about the promotions like the AWA, which basically was a lot of Minnesota, Wisconsin, extreme northern Chicago, Iowa, those areas. Then you get promotions like the Capital Wrestling Corporation, Capital Wrestling in the Northeast. You had Florida as a territory. Even when you look at the bi-state, you had Central States with Bob Geigel up in the Kansas City area, but nobody encroached on Sam Muchnick in St. Louis. And I mean, again, look at the history. When you have Sam Muchnick and the working arrangement he had with the Koppler family and Channel
Yeah.
11 and all the years of what he was able to do. I mean, how many promoters of the 50s, 60s, 70s can say that they had a regular weekly television spot an hour a week bringing professional wrestling on such a mainstream market.
Exactly.
It tells you know what you're doing.
You hear about the NWA, with Crockett having WTBS and how powerful KPLR was for decades here in St. Louis. You could watch KPLR on anywhere in the region, really, on a good night, So I think that the superstation aspect had a lot to do with it. But St. Louis being a hotbed and being important, is it location? Is it Sam Mushnick? What led to St. Louis being, for a while there, the wrestling mecca?
To me, I look at it from a perspective of where else can you go? You're right smack in the center of the country. The St. Louis area, the Midwest, has always prided itself on professional wrestling. There's not a lot as in the continental United States that had such a following as St. Louis wrestling did. To be honest, you had the AWA, you had Florida with the Grahams, you had the McMahons in the Northeast, you had the Von Erichs and the Blanchards and the Funks in Texas. But really, once you get outside of those, that small handful of areas, there wasn't a lot of name recognition. And when it comes to St. Louis, I mean, again, they went everywhere. Once you had a successful run with Sam Muchnick, you could go down to Texas. You could go to the north. And that was the thing, too. You would see wrestlers coming in from all walks of the professional wrestling world. It wasn't uncommon to have wrestlers coming in from Florida, coming in from Kansas City, coming in from Texas, coming in and making occasional stopovers from the AWA. And when it came down to it, St. Louis was the hotbed for a reason. Mm-hmm. And it was because you were showing it earlier on here. When you got teams like the Blues, you got teams like the Battlehawks. If you want to go back a little farther and talk to the days when we had the Steamer or the Ambush, when it comes to sports, St. Louis has always been a town that has very much supported its professional sports. And right at the top of the list for a number of years was St. Louis for that very reason.
And, I will say this, I'm a guy that, loved my wrestling documentaries. WWE did a great job in the early 2000s and the 2010s of making these, stories, the AWA doc or the World Class doc. And all of them, even though they were about Texas and Minnesota in a nutshell, mentioned St. Louis, how important it was to the Von Erichs, to Vern. And it was a bit surprising to me because, I'm old enough to have gone, look at the gray hair, to the Kiel Auditorium and how important that was to the NWA. So, I mean, does it also play into buildings? Because we have the Chase and we have the Kiel. Are those showcased? I mean, you hear about the Cow Palace in San Francisco and the Spectrum in Philly and, of course, the Garden. How much of it is the venues in St. Louis?
Well, you know something, and again, Jared, I'm going to call on you here for just a second. You have been a fan for several years. Not going to say you're not knowledgeable because you have a wealth of knowledge. Did you ever get the opportunity to experience pro wrestling at the Kiel Auditorium?
No, I did not.
Yeah, it was well torn down before he was even alive. So.
Well, that is true, but I was just going to give him the opportunity. Mm. Now, when you talk about professional wrestling and you talk about places like the Kiel Auditorium, and I'll tell you right now, my first memories of the Kiel was when Starrcade came to St. Louis. And to be honest with you, we're not going to talk about Sting and the Black Scorpion because we all know how that went. And that's another episode for another broadcast of this show. But when you got to see, and to me, the matches of that event was that international tournament. Yeah. When you sit there and look at it, it wasn't just Kiel Auditorium. To me, if you're going to talk pro wrestling, one of the big venues is the Coruscant Room.
Yes.
And having the opportunity to to perform in that building. And I mean, to give you a heads up, I know there's a lot of promotions here in the area.
Mhm.
I know that SICW has been in that venue before. I know, actually, I've heard rumblings there's going to be a couple of other wrestling promotions that are already trying to line up to get time in that famous venue. And right now, a lot of people say right place, right time. But when it comes to St. Louis, in all the years I've studied St. Louis wrestling, there haven't been too many bad events when it comes to any of those venues. And one of the big things too wasn't just the fame, as my good friend Adam Pierce says, Sweet Charlotte 10 pounds of gold. It wasn't just that. We had the NWA Missouri State Championship.
Yes.
And when you look at those names, and you look at it, the likes of a Harley Race, like a Crusher Blackwell, like a Ken Patera, on the Von Erichs had held that belt. I believe the Funks had held that belt.
Yes,
when it comes down to it, that title in itself was a marquee drawing card.
I've heard that title equated to the IC title, to the US title. If you were in line for the Missouri State title, you were going to be the man one day. So that to me, that's a lot.
Very true. Very true. And I mean, again, that's one of those, you sit there and you look at the likes of like I said, of Avani. And again, think about it this way. You reference it to an IC or a US title. In the territory days, could you imagine the idea of some of the likes of a Bob Backlund, a man who would go on to become the WWF champion, WWF champion, among other things, Hall of Famer. And again, it goes back to the reputation of Sam Muchnick and a reputation of St. Louis to come here and be the NWA Missouri State champion. I mean, it wasn't just the venue. It was the idea of, look at what's on the marquee. Look who Sam Muchnick's bringing in. And again, one of them that I always, Crusher Blackwell, was the NWA Missouri State champion. And I mean, again, a lot of people say that was the next in line for the NWA world title. And how many 400 plus pound men can throw drop kicks and land right on the point of the jaw? Muchnick brought the best of the best.
And I will say, being a belt mark like I am, that Missouri State title is a beautiful, beautiful belt. There's not many that could top it. It's just probably the best looking secondary belt I've ever seen. It's you haven't seen, Google it, kids. It's striking. It really is.
Yeah, and like you said, Chris, it's one of those where when you sit there and look at it, I mean, and you and I've had the conversation. I'm one of those that I absolutely love professional wrestling. I'm a huge belt collector myself. Back several years ago, I think it was right as you were about to your official entry into the world of professional wrestling. I remember when our broadcast colleague, the one, the only, Ben Simon, and our good buddies over at Missouri Wrestling Revival actually created the MWR Missouri State Championship. And that championship was almost identical to the NWA Missouri State title. And I'm going to say, anytime I came within 50 feet of that belt, I was just like a moth to the light. I just had to look at it because it just so reminded me of the importance of this area.
Being the wrestling, for lack of a term, nerd that he is, Ben even had the imperfections put into the belt, which is just next level awesome. And our friend Jimmy Harris Sr. says, evening, sir. Hope you're having a great one. Joining us here on the show. So, okay, next question, Jared. We know that St. Louis is a unique position, not being the biggest city anymore. It has shrunk considerably. We know that. But it still is home to way more than the average city's indie promotions. How is that viable for us? How do we keep that up? Because none of these ones are really struggling that much. A lot of them put butts in seats, as we know. So what makes St. Louis different that we can support this many indie promotions?
You know, what makes St. Louis very different from a lot of other states is the different type of promotions you have. You have like what some may call the four pillars, and you have some that will call themselves the powerhouse of the Midwest, and you have some that is kind of reach out to the talent that hits on that brim of wanting to go to that extreme, or you have some promotions that will get that group of talent, keep that group of talent, and push that talent to the moon. So St. Louis, when it comes to their wrestling currently, that is their strong point, is the promotions that self-identify who they are just by their talent.
All right. And Luke, what do you think? Why is St. Louis able to house as many indie promotions with most cities' teams?
Well, you know something, Chris? Jared was kind of right on point with that. In the idea of when Wrestling at the Chase unfortunately met its demise, there was not a lot of professional wrestling left in the St. Louis area. To be perfectly honest, you really only looked at the idea of the MMWA, which many people in the St. Louis area know as the South Broadway Athletic Club. And as time goes on, the wrestling industry has had a mind of its own. I mean, you sit there, you look at it, you look at the likes of an RCW that came out of about the same time period as South Broadway. You look at the likes of Gateway Championship Wrestling, which comes out of the likes of a Pete Madden, of a Big Bad Ben, among others. Jim and Crystal Yun, Makazi, Sadie Blaze. I could go on. But the thing is that, and a lot of people have said this countless times, professional wrestling, everybody has something for everybody. It's just that simple. I mean, we go back, I think it was about a month ago, and we had a night when 4 major promotions were all running events within approximately an hour of one another. And every one of them were successful.
Yeah, they drew.
Everybody drew, and they didn't draw a few. They drew a good, solid house, and everybody brought a different style of pro wrestling. And that's one thing that's great about St. Louis. If you want to see high-flying 450 splashes, you want to see 630s, you want to see like 3-rotation hurricanranas, you want to see top rope planchas and tope suicidas, you've got promotions for that. If you want to go see a promotion that's family friendly and you get a lot of high fives and people who get the boos, there are promotions for that. If you want to see basically power wrestling, you've got avenues for that. If you want to see the hardcore wrestling, there are promotions that have wrestlers that can do that. And that's one thing that St. Louis has. Everybody has its own niche. And that's one thing that I feel very fortunate for. And I feel very honored as a member of the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, is the idea to go to all of these different promotions. And it doesn't matter what the name is on the marquee. Everybody brings their A game every time. And when you have pro wrestling on the marquee, people in St. Louis are going to pay attention to it.
So, I mean, okay, Jared, again, I'm going to ask the young guy. What does Wrestling at the Chase mean to you? Because we know that name. Luke and I know that name. Did you have to go look at the history when you heard about what was going on, or did you know it from just going to shows? Or
I knew it from going to shows. Any wrestling show, whether it's St. Louis or over in Illinois or pretty much in any state in the Midwest, you've heard of the Chase, the historic venue with just so many fantastic names of on air, all of those names that have been in the industry. So anywhere you go, you've heard of the Chase, the historic of it, and how valuable it is to not only St. Louis wrestling, but worldwide professional wrestling.
Yeah, I'm looking here at myself trying to find my Wrestling at the Chase book, but I don't know where I put it. I was going to grab it out, but so.
Well, Miles, I figured that was going to be the case. You see here at the wonderful Luke Roberts' office here. And let me see here. Since you want to talk about that, and again, being the wrestling historian, let's see here. Let's go ahead and continue the question. I want to prove to make it a point that I can find that for you. So,
all right.
Let's go ahead and continue.
We talked about the Chase and other companies that have tried to bring it back over the years. NWL was one that really tried hard to bring it back, and the NWA in its current form ran here for a couple years. Now the NWA kind of worked out. NWL unfortunately didn't. Do you think it was just cost prohibitive, or was it just what were the reasons for not to work out? Unfortunately for those guys.
All right, we're talking NWL.
Yeah.
And I've been able to keep mum about this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a lot of the backstories. I heard a lot of the what happened. And in theory, does it make sense? Yes. Unfortunately, in 2026, does the idea of a new upstart territorial company make sense? Not so much. And again, do I like the idea? I like the premise. I like the idea of wrestlers actually being able to get a regular contract.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of wrestlers being able on a regular basis to compete in St. Louis and in KC. I think a lot of wrestlers got to have a lot of experience about that. And again, when you sit down and look at the two promotions that ultimately wound up making the NWL, two promotions that I have the utmost in respect for. One is Metro Pro with Chris Goff in the Kansas City area. Again, countless great wrestlers. We talk about the likes of a Jeremy Wyatt. You talk about the likes of a Dan Walsh. You talk about the likes of Michael Strider and a Pete Madden and a Domino Rivera and an Angel Medina, among others. And just that crowd in that particular venue was off the charts. And then on the St. Louis side, you had the LWA, or at that time, I believe they were actually being considered St. Louis Anarchy. And a lot of people don't know, but I spent the better part of about a year as the president of the LWA.
Oh.
And when I was in that position, I felt very fortunate. And a shout out to all my friends over at St. Louis Anarchy. I know there's a lot of great folks over there. And even then, I saw that they were on the road to great things. And if you look at it now, I know you've been reading about it here in the next few weeks, they're going to do something that not a lot of promotions can say they can. And they're going to be taking their event on the road as a part of WrestleMania weekend. And I mean, again, simply put, that is without question, it shows the dedication and the heart of the St. Louis Anarchy locker room. And I mean, from top to bottom, when you've got guys like the likes of Matt Jackson, among others. And again, even though I don't work there anymore, even though I kind of got the boot, so to say, in the world of professional wrestling, the fact is I still talk on a fairly regular basis with several of the competitors over there. And I wish them nothing but the best. But I mean, again, that shows you what can be done. But I think it was just, I hate to say, I think it was a little too late. And near the end, it was just, I think some really bad things went down. And it's unfortunate. But when it comes down to it, it was a good idea, and it was good while it lasted.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fault them for trying, and you can't fault them for trying at that venue. I mean, we talk about the history there and all about it. So, Jared, next question is for you. We still get shows here in St. Louis from AEW, from WWE, big ones. We get really more TV and more pay-per-views than the medium-sized markets do. Is that just based on our history, or are we still just showing up like we always do, or what do you think?
I think it's the market in St. Louis. A lot of the mainstream wrestling shows like AEW, WWE, a little bit of TNA, when they decide that they want to come to St. Louis, they know it's a marketable city, and they know that the audience, more than half of St. Louis, are devoted wrestling fans, and that it's an easy marketable scene for them to go to, whether it's at the Chaifetz Arena, whether it's at Enterprise, either or. It's there we go. It's an easy marketable city for those major shows, and even for the local wrestling companies. It's easy to market.
Okay.
They know the fans are devoted, and the fans will be there.
Why is St. Louis still a power, even though it's not the biggest city anymore?
You know, I'm just going to throw it out there, guys.
Uh-huh.
To quote Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And
Okay.
that's one of those where, I mean, again, you put it in the Chaffetz Arena, it's going to draw. You put it in Enterprise Center, it's going to draw. If you put it, I mean, again, we haven't had a chance to see it in a while, but if you put it in the Dome at America Center, I think it would draw. I mean, it has in the past when WCW came here for things like Slamboree. There's a lot of different things that make St. Louis such an important venue. And I mean, again, there's a lot of people, and I go back to another promotion, and that being WLW. And for many, many years, Harley Race being in charge of the company, and only about an hour outside of St. Louis. And when you have people the likes of a Harley Race, among others, who regularly make stops here in the St. Louis area. And again, you see pictures all the time. The guys like Adam Pearce's, like Tommaso Ciampa's, and you can go on and on and on about wrestlers. Ricky Steamboat, I believe Morishima was here at one point. St. Louis is one of those where if you want to take your game to the next level, even in 2026, if you want to see where you stack up in the world of pro wrestling, especially at the independent level, you're going to make the stop in St. Louis because there's so many great wrestlers, so many great competitors. And again, you have the chance to put yourself on the main event stage if you can say that you've been to St. Louis.
I think one of my favorite memories, because I'm that guy that I would buy the DVD of all the events that I would go to, even though I was there. No Mercy 2001. The Rock versus Chris Jericho for the WCW Championship. And Paul Heyman is just gushing about St. Louis. He's like, to win this belt, to win the big gold belt in St. Louis carries more weight than most people know. And that made me happy because I'm like, hey, he gets it. You know, of course, Paul Heyman is going to get it. But it's just like, we got our flowers in that one moment. So.
Well, you know something, Chris? Another one to look at, too, and I know that we've talked about it, and the maestro joining us in the house this evening, the man who's going to be hosting the 2026 Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, and an executive. Just to let you know, Carp, pay raise. Simple as that. Moving right along. When it comes down to, if you remember back 1997, Bad Blood, with the first Hell in a Cell, during that event, the WWF at the time recognized the legends of St. Louis wrestling.
I was there. I remember that, yeah.
WWF recognized, and a lot of those wrestlers, they weren't WWF guys. A lot of them were NWA guys. And when it comes down to it, that should right there show it. But when you get more and more promotions giving the flowers, and again, shout out to Jared, again, talking about AEW Collision, Dynamite, you name it, coming to St. Louis. Again, WWE finally giving us a little bit of a thank you for being loyal to them with bringing Stand and Deliver here in early April.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Royal Rumbles.
WrestleMania.
We've had two Royal Rumbles. We've had Survivor Series. We've had WrestleFest. I mean,
WrestleMania.
The biggest non-football crowd ever at the Dome was the Royal Rumble, and the biggest crowd period at Enterprise Center has been wrestling. Okay, Bax wants to know why you have none of his merch on your shelf. Do you have an answer?
You know something, Bax? I got no problems, my friend. I know there's not a whole lot of stuff on the shelf, but you know something? I need to make sure that there's prime real estate if I'm going to show off that merchandise. It's not blasphemy if you're wanting to show proper respect.
Do you have room for a cucumber up there? That's the number one merch seller right now is the cucumber.
The proceeding was a statement by the one, the only Christopher Miles. All viewpoints are specifically that of Christopher Miles and do not reflect any way, shape, or form of Jared Shannon, Luke Roberts, or any other member of this program.
And of course, Bax again. I like this guy. Somebody has to, Bax. I mean, somebody has
That well, you got to remember though here, Miles. We can go back and talk about that little idea of, and again, that's one of the reasons why I very much feel honored to be in the Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
Was I the best wrestler in the world? No. I had a good career when I was in there. I had a good career as an announcer, but to me, I think the biggest thing to me was the idea of the amount of quality referees that had the opportunity to sit and learn and not talk too much trash about me. But I sit there and I look at it. I mean, the likes of a Kurt Stiles, and Eric Davis, a Christopher Miles, a Scott Ramsey, an H.D. Daniels, and Aaron Lawrence at CHWA. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But you know something? When it comes down to it, St. Louis has always been a hotbed for wrestling.
Mhm.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why everybody. That's why we have such a great show right here, right now, because pro wrestling is important to us. And I think what's the old NWA? It's still real to me.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Bax, Miles, don't get verbally assaulted. Focus on this better than you do on your counting, pal. Hey, I've counted down your shoulders plenty of times, Bax. I know what it's all about. So just keep on flapping them gums, young man. So we've spoken of the Hall of Fame, a wonderful organization that you're a part of, and they have that wonderful, ceremony every year. Do you think there is space in St. Louis for a brick and mortar physical Hall of Fame?
My answer, yes.
Mhm.
And here's why. One of the things that I'm going to say is simple. Right now, the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame in the last couple of years' time has finally done something that a lot of promotions and a lot of territories, if you will, has not had the opportunity to do. And that is recognizing wrestlers that are outside of just one promotion. I mean, when you sit and look at last year's class, and I'm not trying to slight anybody, it was a dynamite class, but you have the likes of a Pete Madden. You have the likes of a Jeremy Lightfoot, of a Douglas O'Shea, of a Steve Sharp, myself, Doc Lombardi, Mark Bland, Ace Strange, Mischief, Sadie Blaze. I mean, I go on and on and on. But that's the thing. There is so much wrestling history. There is so much knowledge. And I mean, again, I'll throw it out there. Guys like a Ben Simon. And I'm going to tell you, you call me a historian, I'm a flat out level with you. I think the man, if you want to talk pro wrestling in St. Louis, and I'm pretty knowledgeable, but you got a handful of guys the likes of a Herb Simmons. You've got people the likes of a Ben Simon. You've got people the likes of a Dr. Drew Abbenhouse. You've got people who've spent time going from promotion to promotion to promotion, learning their craft, doing the best that they can. And I know this may get me a little bit of flack, but it's the truth. There are a lot of wrestlers that don't get their flowers. Guys like Harsh, guys like Izzy Blackwell, guys like Steve Montana, guys like Big Bad Ben, guys like Dino Blade, guys like Marcus Mansfield, guys like Carol Brown, like Steve Murphy, like Tom Simon. There are so many men, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I could go on for the women just as much.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, is there enough to have a brick and mortar Hall of Fame? Yes. And there is so much stuff. At the last Hall of Fame, there was a banner from the old GCW. It wasn't the little one. It was like the 6 foot long one. And that was on display.
Yeah, I remember spending many nights at Aggies watching old GCW. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you've got stuff like that. I've talked to a couple of wrestlers who one of the things is when you retire, you leave your boots in the ring. I've talked to a couple wrestlers who've been willing to share their history. I've talked to the likes of people like Jeremy Lightfoot, who had countless different headdresses that he wore to the ring. I tried to get the idea of getting Sadie Blaze and an autographed fire extinguisher, but Chris Rodell said he wouldn't come in the building because of it. But when it comes down, shout out to Rodell, by the way. I know I give him a lot of grief, but when it comes down to it, one of my best friends in the business.
Big Sexy
is hopefully going to be in the house if we can make this work. But a brick and mortar Hall of Fame, yes, I think it's definitely well overdue. Again, you got the one in New York City. You've got the Gable, as they call it, the Tragos Thez in Iowa.
Well, yeah, I remember when there was the Pro Shirt Shop in I think it was South County Mall. They had a small physical Hall of Fame, which was really cool. But I'd love to see. Jerry, what do you think? Would you go to a wrestling Hall of Fame in St. Louis?
I'd invest in it. I mean, it's that simple. When it comes to pro wrestling, one of the things I always tell, doesn't matter, referee, wrestler, timekeeper, announcer, whatever, you've got to learn your history. History 101 in this industry. And I'll tell you right now, one of the truest statements, and Miles, be fortunate I didn't put you through it because you probably would have yelled at me. But when I was first training Scott Ramsey way too many years ago, one of the first things I said was, you want to learn about pro wrestling? Here's your notebook. Here's what you got. First match I put in the DVD player was Harley Race versus Ric Flair from Starrcade '83. And I had a couple other trainees here with me that night doing some video study. And the first thing out of Scott Ramsey's mouth was, great match. Too bad Gene Kiniski messed up the ending. Now, he was a kid at the time, 16 years old. Had been around wrestling for about a year and had enough knowledge to learn the history. And that's the one thing. I'll tell you right now, if we had a brick and mortar Hall of Fame and Shannon got the opportunity to be in, he would have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information. He would be many years farther than his already accomplished broadcasting career. He would be many years ahead just by being able to sit in. It's kind of like an aura when you're in that room and you've got all these wrestlers who've made the road trips. You've had the blood, sweat, and tears. You just learn. So, I mean, kind of like osmosis.
And then Jimmy Harris says there's a lot of stuff we're working on, and that's something we are looking into, which is great to hear. So, Jared, are you making the road trip? Or are we going to broadcast live from the future Hall of Fame at some point?
Absolutely. That is definitely something that I would be extremely interested in seeing and learning about. So, and definitely looking forward to who would be in that Hall of Fame 20, 40, 50, 60 years later, because you have the Ben Truss, the Bax, the James Brady, the Lenny Mephistos. You have all these different phenomenal athletes that could not potentially, but will be in that future Hall of Fame.
And think of the shows we could have there at the building. It'd be great.
Oh. Well, you know something, gentlemen? I want to take a minute here. I know we're going to talk in a little bit about the actual Hall of Fame as well. But looking at some of the possible inductees, and that's one thing that's very fortunate. When you enter the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, your career is done. It's not like the Terry Funk retirements where you're going to be in a ring 16 times or anything like that. When you sit here and you look at it, there's a lot of great wrestlers that we haven't even scratched the surface. And I'm just going to run a few. The besties in the world.
Yeah.
Nobody gives the besties. I won't say nobody, but a lot of people don't give them as much credit as they deserve, and they deserve a lot. Guys like Carol Brown from Central Championship Wrestling, guys like the Big Texan. Two guys right now, hands down, no question, need to be in a Hall of Fame. One of them is Gary Jackson. 2, Billy McNeil. Those are 2 men right now that need to be there, and they need to be there sooner rather than later.
When they're done, because I don't think Billy's done yet.
I don't think Billy's ever going to be done.
Yeah.
Billy's going to be one of those where, and again, I know people have had the opportunity. If you haven't caught it, whether it's SICW, IEW, wherever you can find it, if you can find footage of Billy McNeil and Chris Exodus, you need to watch it, and you need to watch it to a point of where you can look at every little bit of that match in your memory, because both of those matches were amazing. And that shows credit to both men. So
we just talked about one of the young wrestlers there, Chris Exodus. Jared, what why does St. Louis breed such good young wrestlers? Is it? I mean, we've got the resources. We've had so many good workers on the pads. Is it that? Is it the fact that we've had a couple good schools here, or is it just it's infectious in the air in St. Louis?
St. Louis, when it comes to upcoming young talent, St. Louis will pour all their love into that talent, because good talent, it will come, and within an instant, they're done. So whenever there's a talent that comes, no matter what part of St. Louis you're in, you're going to show out and support that young talent, because you want to see that young talent go through the indies and eventually make it to whatever their dream is, whether that's going to the mainstream or staying local and seeing the local local scene strive. So,
and I know Luke. Yeah. Luke, you mentioned it. How much St. Louis supports their own. I mean, look at in the NBA, Jason Tatum has a wild fan base, even though he plays for Boston. He's a local boy. Randy Orton is, massive everywhere, but he's a, godlike in St. Louis. So, I mean, is it just the fact that St. Louis supports their own, or what is it?
Well, you brought up a great point. I mean, again, call me an old timer if you want. I mean, it's not going to offend me too much anymore. But no, when you sit there and look at it, I mean, again, the first training school I ever had a chance to be a part of nearly 40 years ago was the South Broadway Athletic Club. And I will tell you, and I will say this with every bit of love I have in my body, because I always am very thankful for the training I got at the South Broadway Athletic Club. That was the second hardest ring I'd ever been in my life.
It's a boxing ring.
No, it wasn't the boxing ring.
Oh, okay.
It was just as bad. I mean, the ropes. The ropes were brutal. You were lucky it didn't have any padding. It was plywood.
I've had a couple of guys tell me that they would use the boxing ring in some training experiences, and that had to be terrible.
Been there, done that. But I mean, as time goes on, though, I mean, you have the likes of a GCW. And look at what they produce. They produce the likes of a Daisy Hayes, a Mischief, a Delirious, a Matt Seidel, among others, a Dingo. Then you go to the opportunity of seeing a promotion like MECW, which is a promotion that only lasted a couple years over in the Metro East. But they had a training school and brought several great wrestlers. As a matter of fact, and I will always give a shout out to MECW for this, had an opportunity to referee a match with a gentleman at the time was named Prince Fale. All of us know him now as Bad Luck Fale. Had that opportunity. But then you get into the likes of a Dynamo Pro, and you look at the idea of all these great wrestlers. When you talk about a Savannah Stone, Tootie Lynn Ramsey, Reign Victoria, Dirty Jake Durden, Mike Outlaw, KLD, I could go on, James Brady.
Yeah, at one point an NWA affiliate, correct?
For several years an NWA affiliate, and had the opportunity on two separate occasions to have NWA defense of the NWA World Heavyweight title.
I'm looking at a picture right now of our great friend H.D. Daniels holding up Sweet Charlotte on my computer.
I'm jealous. Big time. But you know something? That's one of the things. We know what we're doing. And again, when you've got a WLW and you've got the Dynamo Pro Dojo, you've got two accomplished schools that have the connections, that have the knowledge, that have all the things you need to do. And it's not just to be a wrestler. You want to be a referee. You want to be an announcer. You want to be a timekeeper. You want to be a manager. You want to be the person running jackets to the locker room. You want to run sound. You want to learn business. You name it. These companies have that. It's all about here. It's all about heart. And that's one of the big things. Trainable, teachable, coachable. You can have those three things. The professional wrestling world, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. All right. So it's about that time. We're almost ready to get out of here. But before we do that, before we say our goodbyes, Luke, tell us what you got coming up, what you got doing. Tell us all about what the Hall of Fame has to offer and what you have to offer, what you got coming up here in the next few months.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on the program tonight.
Mhm.
It's always an honor and a privilege to be on the show. And again, as you notice at the bottom of the screen, make it a point to go over there at w.gg, promo code 123miles. You can get your 10% off. You can also get it at deemedfit.co as well. Like I said, right now, things are going pretty good. This coming Saturday night, CHWA will have the King of the Hills Rumble. It'll be taking place. It's actually on an event titled called March to the Throne. It'll be this Saturday in Edwardsville, Illinois. The King of the Hills Rumble, for those that aren't aware, is a Royal Rumble style matchup. Last time I've heard rumblings that this could be the biggest Rumble they've ever had, which again is props to CHWA for all the hard work they've been putting in. Check them out online. I know I'll be there in some form or another. Very, very active still with Dynamo Pro Wrestling. They got a big summer coming up. Make it a point to check them out on social media. And again, Sunday, July 19th, the 2026 class of the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's going to be at Andres Banquet Center in South County. Tickets $30 in advance, $35 at the door. And again, this year's class, I got to tell you, from top to bottom is amazing. Start right at the top of the list. Steve Montana, longtime accomplished wrestler, member presently of the Screen Actors Guild. Somebody who took St. Louis and used his time in the wrestling industry to move to the next level. A man we talked about earlier in the program, Big Bad Ben, is going to be inducted in the 2026 class. Black Glove Butch Fletcher, a man when many people said that Luke was on his way out, brought me back in. And man, I love to death. The late Mark Mansfield, the Every Lady's Fantasy, phenomenal wrestler, gave me an opportunity on several occasions to compete for championship gold. The Beast, a man I know that you both, I believe, are very familiar with. Beast will be joining that elite class. The last couple to talk about here are very important. It's not just wrestlers that we induct. We also induct individuals. We have what's called the John Blackheart Award, which gives you an individual who basically was the consummate professional, somebody who went out there and you would recognize them for what they did. We also have what's called the Pete Parisi Award, which goes to an individual who may not have been an in-ring competitor, but is somebody who gave a lot to the wrestling industry. This year we will be awarding that to my longtime friend Tom Simon, a man who has spent countless years in the wrestling industry, lifetime member of the CAC. He's a member, I believe he's a member of the Tragos Thez Hall of Fame as far as a sponsor of them as well. Accomplished musician, accomplished roller derby announcer, you name it, he's done it. Also sang the national anthem at the Cauliflower Alley Club. And this year we have two new awards called President Awards. And just looking here at the messages, and again, thank you for giving me all access here tonight so I can see the messages coming in.
Yes.
Shout out to Dean. Thank you for tuning into the program tonight and checking us out. This year there's going to be two President's Awards given. The first one is a gentleman by the name of Johnny Ramirez, who is an accomplished wrestler and referee. And if you were talking about history, true story, Sadie Blaze has the last pair of boots Johnny Ramirez ever wore.
Wow.
I'm not sure if they're autographed or not, but I do know he has the actual last pair of boots. And the last one, the other President's Award, is somebody who's really near and dear to my heart. A lot of people in the St. Louis area may not be familiar with the name, but the second President's Award this year is going to the late valedictorian Keon Option. He's a man who spent several years in countless different promotions here in the St. Louis area. He did a lot both inside and outside of the ring. A man who was gone far too soon, passed away at the age of 30.
That one means a lot to me because that was the first person Keon was that passed away after I got in. You know, and I could see how badly it affected everyone, and myself as well. He was a great person, and to lose him like that young was terrible. So it's good to see he's getting his flowers.
Yeah, and it's one of those two. I mean, again, when you have the opportunity, and this is the one thing that makes the Hall of Fame so cool. Not only do you get a great meal, not only do you get to learn about the history, not only do you get to see people get their flowers that are very justly deserved, but you don't see the infighting. You don't see the backstabbing. I can tell you, last Hall of Fame when I got inducted, you had wrestlers from Dynamo Pro, you had wrestlers from the MMWA, you had wrestlers from SICW, you had wrestlers from CHWA, you had a few wrestlers from PWE. I mean, from top to bottom, you're going to see literally the best of professional wrestling. And when they have that opportunity, I'm going to tell you right now, Miles, I know that you're relatively close. I know that you will be there sooner rather than later. Jared, I'm going to tell you right now, you need to make it a point. I know you've made the journey before. You need to make it your point to come out Sunday night, July 19th, St. Louis, Missouri. You need to be there. And I'm going to tell you right now, this has become a hot ticket. I mean, when you sit there and look at it, the MMWA has signed on as a sponsor. New Genesis Wrestling has signed on as a sponsor. St. Louis Championship Pro Wrestling has signed on. Doomed Outfitters has signed on. Painter's Dream Productions. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You've got the camera guy who's seen it countless promotions throughout the St. Louis area. The Wrestle Talk podcast, our good friends over at Wrestle Talk, are sponsors of the Hall of Fame. And I can say it, ladies and gentlemen, as you heard at the top of the broadcast, not only is the Maestro Jeremy Carp back by popular demand as the MC for the 2026 Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, but they are also a proud sponsor of this year's Hall of Fame ceremony.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you guys, seating's limited. The tickets are starting to go. If you go and you look online, Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame.com, you can get your tickets. And you can get, if you go and you look on that website, every inductee. We don't have the 2026 ones up there yet. We want to make sure we get everything correct. But you can go back and look and see what every Hall of Fame inductee has accomplished. They have their own webpage. You can go back and truly look and see why the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame is setting the standard in the St. Louis area.
There you go. So, Luke, thanks so much for joining us tonight and giving us this dose of St. Louis wrestling history. Do you want to
Well, you know something, Chris? I want to throw one more out here. I know we don't have a lot of time. It's something that you and I talked about, and I just want to get your thoughts being a referee. And, Jared, I know you've heard about this too. As many people know, there's been some pretty hot-button topics as of late in the world of professional wrestling. And I know right now you know exactly what's going on, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leave this to you first. Basically, for those that don't know, one of our I've had the opportunity to be at one or two events. I know Miles has been at a few more than I have. Dallas Edwards suffering a pretty serious medical issue since the last time we were on the air. And Chris, I'm going to throw it to you. I want your input. Being a man in the stripes, being as knowledgeable as you are, what are your thoughts and what are you taking away from this whole situation?
All right. I will, first of all, Dallas, love you very much. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're going to be okay. He's going to be out for a while, but he's going to be back. I know he's going to be doing great, but, I'm a bigger guy. Dallas isn't. Dallas is a smaller person. So therefore, Dallas takes a lot of bumps that I wouldn't necessarily take because I'm a bigger guy. The bump that he took went wrong. It just did. It wasn't supposed to go down like that. And he got struck in the head and had a seizure in the ring and ended up having a brain bleed. And man, it really upset a lot of people the way it went down with the wrestlers moving him out of the way or even the stuff like that. So it was out of hand the way it should have been. I mean, right, Jared? I'm not talking on my ass here, right? It didn't go down the way it should have, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, granted, once they realized he wasn't working anymore, things stopped. The camera came off of him, but I mean, now, okay, I've been talked to before about not checking on people. Because I remember very early on in my career, I had a very intense hardcore match. And the promoter kind of justifiably, too, I'm not knocking this person, got on me for not checking on them enough. They were right to do that because I wasn't. I don't understand how when you have EMTs at a show at this level that's on TV, how this gets missed. And there's been a tremendous amount of backlash against the promotion that Dallas was working for at the time. And to me, it's justified. I hate to say that because there's people that work there and it's their livelihood, but it was bungled all around. Luke?
Well, first of all, and again, like I said, I've only had a handful of encounters with Dallas, and again, you don't want to see anybody. It doesn't matter, wrestler, referee, whatever. You don't want to see anybody get hurt in the ring. And from what I've seen, the original contact wasn't really anything out of the sort. I mean, I've taken my fair share of hits and kicks and punches in the ring in my career. I've had concussions. I know what comes around in the contact sport.
I mean, this is the same guy that took 2 massive choke slams from Herzog.
Mm-hmm. And when you sit there and look at it, I mean, again, the initial contact didn't look that bad. But I mean, again, even if you look at the still footage, there's a couple of good still shots of where one wrestler was actually physically checking on him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looked like, oh yeah, the referee. No, you can visibly see that he was checking on him to see what was happening. But again, the second that he started seizing, I mean, in the heat of battle, I know a lot of people say that you're going to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. In the heat of battle, it may be a few seconds, but when it comes down to it, and you notice that something is dangerously wrong, and somebody is seizing in the middle of the ring, you've got to address it. I mean, I know full well, Chris, Jared, there are enough people in the wrestling industry that as soon as something was happening, something should have been done, something should have been taken care of. I mean, again, I'm pulling the curtain back a little bit, mm-hmm. but there's got to be somebody in a lot of promotions that are on the headsets, that are on the walkies, people that have trained in medical training and say, hey, something's wrong. We need to address this. And to be honest, I don't know what I can say. I think there was some issue, but in the end, I think that first of all, we're thankful that Dallas didn't really seem, at least at this point, not see any long-term effects from this. But it's the idea, and my friend Sadie Blaze, and maybe I'm going to be punished for this, but made a good point. Concussions are a part of wrestling. Injuries are a part of wrestling. But when you have things like that, those are things that are uncontrolled. Those are things that people need to know about because they can be turned very sick, very scary, very serious, very quick. And you want to make sure that you can properly address that so those individuals don't suffer long-term lasting effects or worse. And again, maybe this is the wake-up call that a lot of promotions need to make sure that they have people on staff that know those kinds of things. I mean, I'll tell you right now, for many years, I was fortunate. Jen Blackwell, the wife of Izzy Blackwell, for many years, she had medical training and was ringside. And if something went amiss, she was right there to make sure you were taken care of. Crystal Yunt has always been that way. Christopher Miles, I always give him props because of his knowledge outside and inside the ring. Again, it was a very bad situation. I don't think it was handled the best that it could be. But when it comes down to it, it's one of those lessons learned, and hopefully everybody involved not only is okay, but make sure in the future that we know exactly what's going on.
Well said, sir. Well, Luke, we really got to get out of here, get to our sponsors and our upcoming events. So we wish you good night, and thanks so much for being a part of the show tonight, man.
Not a problem. Like I said, for more information, make it a point. Check out Interstate 70 Sports Media, all the great programs, such as this one right here, Roundabout Sports, you name it, from top to bottom. Great programming. Make sure to check them out and come out and check us out both this Saturday night at CHWA's March to the Throne and on Saturday, July 19th for the Independent St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame class of 2026. Take care, gentlemen.
All right. Good night, sir. Jared? Man, you can't stop Luke, can you? He's just a fountain of information.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any final messages for our listeners out there, or for Dallas? Any words of encouragement?
Absolutely. I hope Dallas heals up very quickly and is back to the local wrestling scene as soon as possible. And there is a little something that I would like to show you guys that was announced not too long ago from Pro Wrestling Epic.
All right, let's see
And
this.
give us a couple seconds and
Before the crowd, there was a place where legends were forged. They stood here. They fought here. They became legends here. But the legends did not leave. They entrusted this sacred ground to us on Saturday, March 6th, 2027. A new chapter begins. Pro Wrestling Epic at the Chase.
I mean, Jared, if you don't have yourself watching that, are you alive?
I am alive, but each and every time I watch that, I get absolute goosebumps.
Yes,
Christopher Miles,
cannot wait. Going to be so much history that night made. Everybody, come to the show. It's going to be a love letter to St. Louis wrestling and wrestling in general. Come out to the show, guys. Whew, okay.
Absolutely. And tickets do go on sale May 3rd, 2026. Go out, check the Pro Wrestling Epic page at PW Epic across all platforms to stay up to date on when the tickets go on sale and onto all upcoming shows, because these are going to be the upcoming days that you are going to want to stay tuned and watch what plays out, because Pro Wrestling Epic is itching themselves into St. Louis wrestling history. Not many promotions get to even step foot into the Chase, but Pro Wrestling Epic is going to make the Chase epic.
The start of something that's going to be massive. It really is. Can't wait till next year. It's going to be amazing. As always, guys, as always, go see our great sponsors. Promo code 123miles at w.gg for some excellent energy powders and hydration powders. Free of dyes, free of all artificial flavors, no sugar, great stuff. Support your first responders, your fire, your EMS, your police, your military. Get some great activewear. Promo code 123miles at deemfit.co. Go buy a Jared Shannon shirt. Go buy this shirt, Ball Refs are the Best Refs, from Christopher Miles at ProWrestlingTees.com/Christopher Miles. I'm proud to be from St. Louis. I'm proud to be a part of this history, because for Jared Shannon and Luke Roberts, I'm Chris Miles, and we've got issues with wrestling.